Why Russia has joined India's Big Cat mission. Why International Big Cat Alliance is the global leadership move that India is making, and how and why it is so important. India's Big Cat Alliance aims to unite the countries to protect the extraordinary species of big cats. And Russia's entry into this has not just added momentum, but also the much needed global attention to it. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh, and today we are going to discuss that what exactly is the International Big Cat Alliance, why India is heading it, how come Russia has got an entry into it, what are the reasons behind it, and many other dimensions. So let us start with understanding that why this has been in news. This has been in news because in the recent India-Russia summit, when the finalized MOU came out, we also found that Russia has decided to join India-led International Big Cat Alliance. So we will be starting here with understanding that what exactly is the International Big Cat Alliance. When we talk about IBCA, it has been launched with the very idea as a global platform where the focus will be big cat conservation. When we talk about the big cat species, here we are taking it main 7 species which are going to be covered, which includes tiger, lions, leopards, snow leopards, cheetah, jaguar and puma. And in all of these, the most important factor that we need to understand here that it was launched by India back in 2023 and it is also headquartered in our country's capital, that is New Delhi. It works right alongside with NTCA, that is National Tiger Conservation Authority. So when we are talking about this alliance, it not only marks the importance of ecosystems conservation, but also how this idea is being headed by India, and again adding momentum to it by Russia's entry, because Russia happens to be one of those countries which actually needs to be part of this, because there are species from these very categories which are present there, and it will be able to facilitate this momentum which has been achieved by the alliance as of now. So we will be getting into the details later, but when we are talking about IBCA, it becomes important for us to understand that how exactly it functions and what exactly it is functioning for. So when we talk about IBCA, it is basically working as coordination of conservation strategies across 95 range countries which host these species. And the whole idea is to make sure that anti-poaching is the main fulcrum in terms of collaboration, and intelligence sharing is also done. It is done through habitat protection, restoration and making sure there are proper trans-boundary corridors. For example, just before Russia, it was Nepal which had joined IBCA. And the additional focus is also on community-based conservation, livelihood support, and when we talk about alliance, such a big global platform, it also works into global research database, technology transfer to the partner countries, ranger training, and most importantly, climate resilient big cat landscapes, so that the threat of extinction, the threat of vulnerability that looms across these species, that is also addressed. And as I talked about that, India is spearheading this alliance, and India is putting not only their effort, they have committed the funding of rupees 150 crore across 5 years as seed finance, and they in the coming times they also aim to attract the global philanthropic as well as multilateral funding to further spearhead the program. Now before I get into the other details related to IBCA, it becomes very important for us right here to look into the details of these 7 species from the perspective of your exam as well. So let us start there. So now when we are talking about the big cats, let us look how their populations look like across the globe and what is their conservation status across globe and India. Starting the first one, tiger. If you talk about their IUCN status, it is as of now endangered, and the global population lies somewhere around 5,600 to 5,700. Whereas if you look at the India's number, the population that India hosts, it is along 3,700, which shows that how important India becomes in terms of conservation efforts. If we talk about tigers as a species, the major conservation threats lie along poaching, habitat loss and linear infrastructure, which misses out on especially the ecosystem that is shared by not just human but also wildlife. The next one that we are going to cover is lion hair. Again, the IUCN status hair is vulnerable. If we talk about global population, it is somewhere around 39,000. And when we are talking about presence in India, the number is less here, that is around somewhere around 700. Again, if we talk about the conservation threats, human wildlife conflict, which is pretty much common across there, habitat fragmentation and diseases. Then we get to see leopards, IUCN status vulnerable. If we talk about global population, the estimates are not clear, but it ranges somewhere between 50,000 to 1 lakh individuals. And if we talk about India's very own number, the population is somewhere around 14 to 15,000 individuals. If we talk about these numbers, the variation exists because there are no repeated population counts that take place. And again, if we talk about conservation threats, poaching is one of the highest that we get to see in leopards, mostly because of the number. Then coming to snow leopard. If we talk about snow leopard, the IUCN status is vulnerable. The global population is dwindling somewhere around 7,000 and India's figure number lies somewhere around 700 itself. The most important factor driving their threat, conservation threat, is not poaching here, rather it is the climate change which is threatening their very habitat. It is also the prey depletion that is saying because of the climate change happening, and mining and infrastructure, that is human wildlife conflict, that is affecting them. Now the rest of the three among the 7 species, the next one we have is cheetah. As of now, the IUCN status is vulnerable. The global population is estimated to be somewhere around 7,000. If we talk about India, then in India we had to reintroduce cheetahs. You would remember Kuno National Park, where Project Cheetah was brought in. As of now, the number is around 32, where 21 were born in India. The major conservation threat here is the habitat loss combined with the climate change. The next one we have here is jaguar. The IUCN status is near threatened. If we talk about their population in India, that would be non-existent because they are not present in India. So goes for puma. But as of now, their population across the globe isn't stable and their IUCN status seems to be on the safer side, that is of least concern. So as you get to see, when we are talking about these big cat species, 5 of them are present in India, and that will also show you that why India should be spearheading this program and why India has been a main part of this. Now moving back to understanding more about IBCA. Now when we have understood the status, especially the conservation status of the big cats, we also need to understand their ecological placement in this scenario, especially in the terms of food chain. So you will get to understand that when we are talking about big cats, they are predators, and that is why they stand high in the food chain. And this is what makes them an important keystone species, because they regulate the ecosystem by controlling the herbivore population, they prevent overgrazing, and they also reduce desertification. They also make sure that the forest and grassland health is maintained, and they are also there to facilitate carbon sequestration as well as climate mitigation. So if we are trying to talk about conservation of the, if we are trying to talk about conservation, if we are trying to help the climate change, address this situation, if we are trying to work on biodiversity, all of this would require to save these keystone species. And when we are talking about these keystone species, we also need to understand the crisis as of now related to them, as we get to see that 6 of the big cats that we have just discussed are either endangered or they are vulnerable or threatened. Furthermore, in recent times, we have seen dramatic range reductions. That means the habitat they had in which they were found, that has reduced drastically. If you talk about tigers, they have lost 93% of their historic range. If you talk about lions, they are extinct in 26 African countries already. Leopards, they are declining in 70% of their range. India was already extinct in terms of leopards. The reintroduction program helped us, and it was Project Cheetah which has finally facilitated their presence in our country. Snow leopards, they are threatened by climate change, and jaguars are already losing their Amazon habitat. So this is where it gives you a framework that IBCA is not just about geopolitics, it is definitely about conservation, and most importantly, it is about getting a platform where this conservation can be enabled for the partners and the range countries which are present here. And in this very context, it also becomes important to understand that why India is heading IBCA. So one dimension I had already given you in the form that India is the only country which has 5 big cat species, which we have already discussed: tiger, lion, leopard, snow leopard and cheetahs, which have been reintroduced. If we talk about conservation, we have remarkable achievements. If we talk about tigers, their population has increased tremendously since the introduction of Project Tiger. If you see, we already contribute to 75% of global population. If we talk about lions, especially Asiatic lions, we have the number around 891, and their range is growing more as around Gir forest. We have proper estimates on snow leopard, which was the first time scientific estimate was done. And then we have cheetahs after the reintroduction program, which shows the success of Project Cheetah. Furthermore, we have other aspects where India has been a model in terms of Project Tiger, using strong monitoring, be it camera traps, be it M stripes, and bringing in community participation as well, where eco-development committees have been of great use for the conservation purposes. And all of this has brought in global recognition for us, which makes us suitable, and we have demonstrated this capability, and that is why we are not only the market leader but a natural leader of this particular alliance. Now moving to the next dimension that we want to discuss today is the fact that we started with, that Russia has joined IBCA. So when we talk about International Big Cat Alliance, you have to understand that it is talking about the range countries, and when we are talking about Russia, it is a range country for Amur tigers, for snow leopard, far eastern leopard, which is marked critically endangered, and also Eurasian lynx. So when we are talking about conservation, we cannot let go of a country which can contribute heavily and also is part of the range countries when we consider about it. And that is why the Russia's entry is heavily important, heavily significant here, because it automatically brings Eurasia's largest wilderness ecosystem under IBCA framework. It adds in terms of scientific capacity, be it in terms of genetics, telemetry, be it the cold climate ecology, and it also gives a new dimension to India's Russia tie in terms of environmental diplomacy. This will be a term that would be very helpful for you in terms of adding dimensions, and it also strengthens the global anti-poaching cooperation that is very much required across Central Asia, and this is where a push will be given, a nudge will be given to major countries, be it China, Brazil, US, to mark and enter in this particular alliance, making again India a more powerful leader for this very alliance. So this entry basically marks a shift from bilateral conservation, where only 2 countries or a single country was involved in conservation, to a global multilateral environmental governance, where countries are coming together for conservation purposes, and that too for specific agendas, in this particular scenario, the big cats. Now I will be concluding on the note that why IBCA matters in the times of present. The first and most important reason, when we are talking about conservation, it cannot be done by individual countries alone, be it the developed ones or be it the developing ones. So IBCA strengthens global conservation because it brings country together through its mandates and functions, and it is a huge support to countries which have limited resources. It helps in preserving mega ecosystems, be it Himalayas, Amazon, Siberia, and this is where we get to see promotion of scientific exchange and data pooling, which links biodiversity with climate mitigation. It enhances community livelihood with ecotourism. All in all, it encourages nations to come together and see wildlife as an instrument of environmental diplomacy and get better not just in terms of conservation but also the mutual benefits which come across with their lines. Now that was all for today. Thank you so much.